First, inshallah, we'll begin with the Salat questions. You said that one needs to hear oneself reciting at the least. I assume this is not necessary if one is in a loud setting like praying along the highway where one needs to yell to hear oneself. Is this right, or should you be able to actually hear yourself in any environment? No, as I mentioned, there were two opinions. One of the opinions said that you have to hear yourself. The other opinion was that it needs to be such that your tongue, your lips move. So obviously you would definitely go with the opinion that your lips are moving if you're in a setting where you have to yell to hear yourself. You could go with that opinion. No, there's no problem with that. If the sisters have any questions, you can those. You just make sure your lips move. And even in a situation where it's so loud that you have to yell to hear yourself, even if you went with the opinion that you should hear yourself, I'm sure that would be laxed, that would be taken more lightly in that case, because it's not reasonable to shout. Anyway, if you what should you do? Yeah, this was a question from last week. What should one do if he is unsure if he's praying the fourth or the third rak'ah? What implications does this have on the tashahhud? Now, as we mentioned last time, it's very necessary to have the last sitting in the actual final rak'ah. So in Maghrib, it needs to be in your actual third rak'ah, whether you know it's your third or not. In Fajr, it needs to be in the second, and in the rest, it needs to be in the fourth. So now you have a confusion between 3 and 4. What you will do is, if this is the first time it's happened to you, the fiqh says that you must repeat your prayer and start again. You break your prayer, you begin again. If this happens often to you, frequently, every few days or every week or something of that nature, then what you do then is you base it on the least. So you go with least. So let's say you have a confusion between 3 and 4, you will take it that you've performed 3. However, in every sitting after that, in the case of 3 and 4, if you're going to take it by 3, then obviously you're just going to make one extra rak'ah. There's no sitting that comes except the last sitting anyway, so that's not an issue. So you make your tashahhud. So that's you can't really understand what I'm trying to get to from this example. You do a sajda al-sahwa at the end, though, after your last rak'ah. Then even if it's 5 rak'ahs, as long as you've sat in your fourth, it's fine. If you have a confusion between 2 and 3, right? You base it on 2. So now you'll take it as though you've only performed 2 rak'ahs. When you perform your next rak'ah, which according to you now is your third rak'ah, but possibly could be your fourth rak'ah, because your issue was between 2 and 3. You went with the least. So it possibly could be your fourth rak'ah. But according to you now, it's your third rak'ah. But even though normally you don't sit in third rak'ah, here you have to sit in your third rak'ah. Because this may well be in reality your fourth rak'ah, but you don't know. And your sitting has to be in that fourth rak'ah. So you just sit for tashahhud, recite tashahhud, then you get up as though you would be in your second rak'ah, for instance. And then you make one extra rak'ah at the end. This way your last sitting was in the right rak'ah, the fourth rak'ah. Had you made a mistake, had it been 4 rak'ahs and you took it to be 3. So that's the way you normally work that out. When women are praying in congregation, is it allowed to leave empty spaces in the lines ahead? If not, does it invalidate the prayer of those standing behind the lines where the gaps are? Within a small masjid, if you're not in a very large masjid, let's put it that way, then gaps in between the sufuf, although they're makruh normally for men, but for women, if they're in another place, in another section of the masjid, even if they have maybe a saf in front, it won't affect the prayer. It won't affect the prayer. But if you're praying in a very large masjid, when I talk about very large masjid, they've given some examples of masajid that are maybe like the Qurtuba masjid, where you can't even see one side to the other, right? In that case, you have to be closer together. But normally within the section of women, they could be leaving a gap in the first row out. it shouldn't be a problem, but it preferably should not be done because there's really no need to, unless it's tight or something. I have heard that the fingers should never extend over the knees so that they are curving towards the ground during the sitting in prayer. Is this valid? Yeah, that's a good point, because the palm should be placed with the tips of the fingers by the knees. So they should be on top. So they should not droop down. That's true. But we won't consider it an invalidator or, sajda sahwa. It's sunnah to have it there. So it would be against the sunnah to have them droop down, but otherwise they should be on top of the knees, the tips, as extended towards the knees, not over the knees. That's true. How is the sajda sahwa performed in the Hanafi school? Basically, in the last rak'ah, after reciting the tashahhud and saying ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, the shahada, raising your finger, you say one salam, make one salam to the right, make two sajdas, as you would do in a regular prayer, two sajdas, and then sit back down and recite the tashahhud again, and then the salawat, and then the dua, and then complete your prayer. To stand up after ruku with itmi'nan, is it sunnah or wajib? To have itmi'nan is wajib in every posture of the prayer. Right? To stand up and have itmi'nan is wajib in every part of the prayer. So the standing is sunnah, but to have itmi'nan is wajib in every part of the prayer. While praying, what if your awrah becomes exposed? For example, hijab of a woman comes off. If it comes off and it reveals the part that needs to be concealed for 3 subhanallah, duration of 3 subhanallah, the salat would be invalid. But if you quickly put it back down, it would not invalidate the prayer. But if the whole hijab comes off, that means you didn't tie it properly, right? And it would be actually difficult to put it back. And if it requires that you do a major action to put it back and tie it back on, and that takes 3 subhanallah doing that, that would break the prayer. In other schools, you have to have a verbal intention. I believe somebody said in the Shafi school they have to have a verbal intention. Somebody mentioned. But I don't know. Don't even quote me on that. I don't know.
Some of these questions are from last week.
Yeah, I didn't answer them last week. If I am Shafi following a Hanafi Imam, and after the Salat he announces that he didn't have wudu, so as a Shafi, do I have to make up the prayer because I was following a Hanafi Imam? I don't think so, but I'm not an authority to give you that fatwa. I don't know. As I know that in the Shafi school it doesn't break the prayer of the muqtadi. The muqtadi is fine. Is the position in line the same for women for prayer? Meaning the benefits for standing in the first 2 lines? Yes, it is. No, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. For the women, it's the opposite. It's those who are behind. Within reason. Within reason. Because, otherwise you're going to be pushing everybody else forward, to get to the back. But I guess if they're concealed, and they're in their place, then I don't think it should be a big problem, right? Because if there's only 10 women that come and they're all going to be in the first saf, that's fine. There's no need to stand way in the back, which would be, it depends on the situation. Like for example here, it would be better to stand in the first saf, because that's more concealed than being in the back saf, in the women's section. Good question. هل التقية سنة? Is wearing a cap sunnah, and what is the dalil? And does a woman who is 3 months pregnant have to fast in Ramadan? About the hat, there are some ahadith which mention the hat being worn, and Prophet ﷺ said that the difference, one of the hadith I can remember right now, is that the difference between another group of people, either he said the mushrikeen, or I think he said the mushrikeen, the difference between them and us is that they, al-ama'im al-qalanis, they wear the imama, their turban, without a hat, and we wear it with a hat, right? And there's other evidences which I don't have in mind right now. I have a book about this if somebody wants, though. Now, in the Hanafi school, it's considered makruh when we recite when we read the makruhat of the prayer. It's considered makruh to pray without a hat on, with the head uncovered. That's what it says, makshuf al-ras, unless it's for tadhallul, unless it's for humility, right? Now, the way I understand this is that it was an etiquette. It was part of the Muslim dress to have a cap until about 80 years ago, or let's say 50 years ago. All right? It still is in India and the subcontinent, in Pakistan, Afghanistan, in those places. In Afghanistan, it's actually a turban as well. Right? The guy won't have a beard, but he'll have a turban. Right? In other places, it's being put into, in fact, the category of bid'ah in some places, unfortunately. The strange thing, though, is I have a book from Sheikh Zahid al-Kawthari, who didn't pass away too long ago. Maybe 40, 50 years ago he passed away. He was one of the greatest scholars of his time. He was, with the Uthmanis. And he writes a book about 50, 60, in the last century, about the karaha, the dislike, the reprehensibility of praying without a hat on. And, he brings his evidences and everything. I'm looking at this book. He's an Egyptian scholar. But today in those same places, a hat is not that important. Now, my personal opinion about this whole thing is that this has something to do with the isti'mar. Because it was definitely part of the social Muslim dress to wear this. And it was part of a person being considered with waqar, with respect. Because it even says things like a person who is without a cap, there's things written about that. I mean, if they're going to make it makruh to pray with the head uncovered, I mean, that's serious, right? I know what Kamal Ataturk did was that he did take off the hijabs and he took off the fez from the heads of the men, the fez of the heads of the men. That's famous, that's known. So maybe that didn't happen in the other places, but it was definitely discouraged, right? And it is being discouraged in some places more than others. In some places, it's only scholars that wear it, and nobody else. In fact, in some places, if you wear one, you're considered a scholar. And the people will come up to you and ask you questions, right? So today, how would you take it? This is my personal opinion about this whole thing. If you're in a place where the community is such that they consider that to be part, then it would be makruh to pray without it. But if you're in a community, like if you go to a country where they don't wear it, then it may not be makruh to do that for the people there, the general people there, because they don't know any better. Wallahu a'lam. Maybe it'll be a lighter form of dislike. But that's what it says in the books, that it's makruh. That's the normal view. So if you go to India and you start taking off your hat, you're causing a problem. And they'll think your namaz isn't done. They'll think your salat isn't done. That's how serious they are. They have actually in England, all the masajid, we have hats by the door for those who don't have it. And those who don't have it, sometimes they put a handkerchief on their head. They tie a handkerchief because it's so, you have to wear it.
Or somebody will put a hat on.
Right, somebody will put a hat on your head. So I guess you should avoid causing a fitna. And you should try to do it because it is a shi'ar. I mean, that is something you'll definitely tell that he's a Muslim from far off. And it's less provocative maybe than wearing a thobe. Right? So I would encourage it as much as possible. But I'm still going to confirm my look at this whole thing with some scholars. That can we take? I know that if I do it with the Indian Pakistani scholars, they will say, no, it's makruh, khalas, finish. Right? That's wrong not to wear one. Right? But, I guess people are not in that condition anymore. Wallahu a'lam. And we have a last question here. Oh, okay. If a woman who is 3 months pregnant have to fast in Ramadan, it depends. If a person has an exceptional situation, the doctor says that it's very detrimental to her because she has complications, it's a complicated pregnancy, then in that case, if the doctor is explained the importance of fasting and he says, no, you really can't, it's this, then after consultation, she may not fast then, fast later on. She has to fast later on though, she can't give fidya, unless she's going to be incapacitated for life and will never be able to fast again. Otherwise, doctors are always telling you to do the better thing, but it's not necessarily necessary. So you have to really tell them the situation. So pregnancy has really nothing to do with it, because there are foods that you can eat during suhoor and iftar that the dietitian will tell you about, or these old wives will tell you about, old grandmothers will tell you about. They eat this will produce, this, they tell you this certain things. They work sometimes. The new generation should not just pass all of those things out as folk tales or whatever. Sometimes they do work. What we eat is a lot of junk most of the time. So we're not really any better, with the pizzas and everything. It's junk. So, again, if they have a complication, it would be permissible to forego the fast, but they should do that with ihtiyat, because they would be losing a lot of good deeds if they did it on just a small, basis.